welcome back to my channel. My name is Kim and today I am going to share with you 2 recipes that we use when we have some extra milk to use up before it goes bad. So the first recipe is for cinnamon rolls, and I am going to link the recipe in the description box so that you can go and look it up at your leisure. I have put milk, oil, and sugar in a heavy bottom stock pot here, and I am going to turn on the heat and I am going to scald the milk. We do not want it to come to a boil. We just want it to heat up enough to dissolve the sugar and see just a little bit of steam rising off the milk. Again, we don't want the milk to boil. The reason we don't want the milk to boil is because we don't want fat separation, and the reason we're just heating it up is because we need it warm for the yeast to proof before we add the flour. I really like this recipe. It is a Pioneer Woman recipe, but I also saw one very similar on America's Test Kitchen show, and it makes a very beautiful dough. So next up, we're going to add 8 cups of flour. I just use an all-purpose flour because that's what we have on hand, and I like to use ingredients that are pretty common in the kitchen. Now that we've added our 8 cups of flour, we are going to stir this up. I like to use a wooden spoon for this, and it is going to be very sticky. It is not going to be fully formed, but we are going to cover it and let it rise for an hour before we do anything else with it. One reason I really like this recipe, besides the fact that it helps us use up milk and is very tasty, is that I can make it all in this stock pot. So after it has been rising for an hour, sometimes I've gone longer than that, you sprinkle in some more flour, salt, baking soda, and baking powder. This enables us to be able to use the dough right after we have mixed this up if you want to, but I have also mixed it up and left it in the refrigerator overnight. I like to do this last bit of mixing with my hands. I really feel like bread dough just needs you to knead it. Another good thing about just doing it all in one pot is you can just really get all those little bits and pieces that are stuck to the edge as you're kneading the dough together. So once it is all kneaded and mixed in really well, you can go ahead and roll out your cinnamon rolls. I, this night, decided to cover it and put it in the refrigerator and bake up my cinnamon rolls fresh in the morning. Now it's morning, and here's what the dough looks like after sitting all night, and I have all my ingredients and supplies ready to make some cinnamon rolls. Okay, so I'm going to sprinkle a little flour in there and just kind of punch down the dough, and then we're going to divide it in half, because this is a very large batch of dough, and 1/2 will easily make close to 2 dozen cinnamon rolls. Rolling out cinnamon rolls is a very hands-on job, and it's really fun to work with the dough and get it all rolled out. Since there are 2 chunks of dough, I normally do the first one, and then I let whichever kid is on hand and wants to practice rolling out the second one. It always looks easy when I do it, they say, but a little harder when they do it, and I feel like it just needs a little more practice, and so I like to give them the chance. So once you have it all rolled out and you want it to be more of a rectangle than a circle, I melt about 1/2 stick of butter, and yes, it's a lot of butter, but it ends up being just the right amount. You spread that around. I like to use my hands. You can use a spatula, but like I said, cinnamon rolls are very hands-on for me, and I just like to get on in there. So make sure your hands are clean and spread that butter. Once the butter's all spread, I wash my hands, and then it's time to sprinkle some cinnamon. I like to sprinkle the cinnamon directly on the butter. I feel like it helps prevent separation after it's been baked and rolled up. And I don't really measure, I just follow my heart. We like a lot of cinnamon, but if you don't like a lot of cinnamon, you don't have to put nearly as much. And next is the sugar. I tend to not use my hands for the sugar, but I do just sprinkle as I go, and I don't measure a whole lot. It looks like a lot of sugar. It probably is a lot of sugar. But we don't have these all the time, and it is a treat. So I'm just going to spread it around and cover everything up. It turns into a nice kind of caramely as it bakes in the oven, and it's very, very delicious. The next step after the sugar is all sprinkled on there is to roll it up. I like to start from the top and roll towards me. I feel like you get a better roll when you get started. It's just kind of like tucking and rolling because you want to keep the sugar and the filling in the dough. So you don't want to pull it towards you, but kind of just, like I said, tuck and roll. When you get to the end, you're going to kind of pull it over and then pinch it shut so that it stays together and doesn't unroll. Sometimes it's hard because there's a little bit extra flour along the edges and it doesn't pinch, but if you keep kind of working it, it'll happen. What I'm doing here is kind of making sure it's not stuck to the bottom so that once I cut it, it's easy to lift off and put onto the pan. Now I'm going to cut it. I cut the end pieces off and don't put them on the pan right away. I like to see where I can fit them after all the other pieces are placed on the pan, mostly because end pieces aren't beautiful and they can just kind of be put in an odd corner. When you're placing these on the pan, you don't want them to be too far or too close together. I like to do just a little bit of space in between so they have room to rise, but if there is too much, I feel like they kind of fall apart even, and if there is too little, they get really, really squished looking. Sometimes the way I'm putting them on the pan now might be too close together, but that's just how I do it to make sure I have enough space for them all on the pan. And now I won't be using this whole pan for these, as you see I'm just about done, but we do have another batch to roll out and I will finish filling this pan with those. I let them rise for about 20 minutes before I put them in the oven and then bake them until they are light brown. We like to eat them with frosting. An orange cream cheese frosting is the best, or you could try a maple glaze. On this day, I decided to make some waffles because we still had some milk left that I wanted to use up before it expired. So I will link the recipe for this in the description box below, but I make a triple batch, I believe. I believe it's a triple batch because we like to eat the waffles and then put them, rest of them in the freezer so we can have them for multiple meals. I feel like it's easier to do it this way than to bring out the waffle iron multiple times in a month. So here I am mixing up the dry ingredients, and then after I get all these kind of mixed up together, I am going to mix up the wet ingredients. The dry ingredients are flour, sugar, baking powder, and salt. So here we go. We're measuring the milk now. I'm trying to show you, but it's not focusing super great, but it's 4 cups of milk. Then we are going to get some butter melted. The fun thing about this recipe is that all the wet ingredients are warm, so the butter is evenly distributed, so it's melted, and I really like this format for making waffles. I feel like it makes them buttery and rich and still a little crispy. It's a really great combination. It's my favorite waffle recipe. So I'm going to beat the eggs here and then mix those in with the milk and butter. And I'm going to add some vanilla to it as well. This would be a great time if you wanted to add other flavorings, some lemon zest or orange zest or any other kind of flavoring. I would add it right into the wet ingredients and I think it would be very, very tasty. I am a big fan of orange zest in most breakfast sweet things. I think it really pairs well with cinnamon and maple syrup. Once we have it all mixed together, we are going to pour the wet ingredients over the dry ingredients, and we are going to do our best to not over mix it. Sometimes when you make multiple batches, so like I'm doing a triple batch right now, it's hard to not over mix and still get things mixed in well. I think we do a pretty decent job of that though. So what we do in my family is I make the waffle batter and then my kids have a system and they cook the waffles in the waffle iron. My oldest son, he's really good about knowing, pouring it in, being really safe, not burning himself. And then the girls will bring the plate back and take the waffles to the cooling rack. And we all like to watch the light as it changes to green. which means the waffles are done. So when they are done, we put them here on the cooling rack so they don't get soggy. And once they're cooled, then we can stack them. You see we have a good bit of waffles here. And once we have them for breakfast, I'll be able to put a couple of bags into the freezer. Thanks for watching us make these recipes and have a wonderful day. Bye!